Hi everyone, this is Melissa, artist in residence for Imagine, and today I'm going to be making a beautiful card using fireworks sprays and actually some VersaMagic and embossing powder. I really like to use this technique whenever I want some kind of resist because I feel like it's one of the easiest methods there is. And I'll start with a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. I really like the way that cardstock takes up the firework sprays. And then I use a stencil from Whimsy Stamps called Sun Rays. I use a large dauber and then Madness VersaMagic. I have always really liked VersaMagic inks. They do take a little bit of time to dry, but that works great for this technique because it does take me a while to actually ink through the stencil. But as long as those inks stay wet, I'll be able to emboss over them. So once I'm finished, I'd like to add a little sun to the bottom of the stencil as well, so that it actually looks like there's a sun there with the rays coming off of it. And I simply dab that on with the dauber and make kind of a semicircle. Once I'm finished with that, I take some embossing powder from Imagine in clear, and I just shake that all over my card and then kind of shimmy the cardstock to get that embossing powder all over the ink. I didn't use a static tool before I started. You could do that if you're concerned, but with this technique, honestly, you don't really need it. There's so much VersaMagic there to hold on to that ink, and very little sticks to the Bristol Smooth cardstock other than where the ink is. And like most people, I use embossing powder over a sheet of paper, or you could use a coffee filter so that I can add the excess back to the jar of embossing powder. And then I'll take my heat tool, and once it gets really hot, I'll go ahead and start the embossing of the VersaMagic ink with the clear embossing powder. Your paper does curl a little bit, but that's okay. I'm actually going to be adding some fireworks sprays to the paper as well, so it's really going to start to curl. The colors that I will be using in the fireworks sprays are Dandelion, Tangerine, no, sorry, Tangelo, Rosebud, Bahama Blue, and Summer Sky. So as always, I like to put my cardstock down in a box so that the sprays don't go everywhere, and then I simply spray around the card. I do shake the fireworks sprays a lot because they have beautiful shimmery powder in them that if you don't shake it up, you don't get a really even spray. So I make sure that I do so before I add the colors. And I'm just going in the order of yellow and then orange and then pink and then blue. Now I will tell you, when you add these sprays to cardstock, you want to think about the colors that you're adding because you want to make sure that you're mixing colors that will not mix and get a muddy color. So pinks and blues tend to mix well into a purple. Oranges and pinks tend to mix into either a lighter orange or a more vibrant orange. Yellows and oranges mix well. The colors that don't usually mix well are things that will turn kind of muddy brown, like blue and yellow. Blue and yellow make green, as you know, but in a sky, you don't really want that. So you have to be careful when you add the sprays in that order if you want a yellow next to a blue. I will show you an example of that where I do use yellow and blue next to each other, and it tended to work out okay, but I tilted the card so that the blue ran away from the yellow once the yellow was dry. Now I do go back in here, you see, and add a little bit more blue because I felt like it was a little light. And then I simply take a paper towel and dab it off. And you can see I get this really beautiful shimmery embossed area where the embossing kind of fades into the sky. I love the way it looks. You could be a little bit more controlled, and instead of using the actual spray, you could take a paintbrush and paint on those sprays if you want something more uniform. But I kind of like the look that you get. This is the first card I did, and you can see where the blue and yellow mixed maybe a little, kind of giving me a not really true blue, but kind of a greeny blue, but I think it looks okay. So you just have to be careful when you decide to mix those sprays that you're getting colors that mix well together. You don't want something that looks muddy and brown in your sky. And now that I've done all of the technique-based things for this card. I'm basically just cutting the image that I did down to a 4 by 5 1/4 and adding terra tape to the back of the cardstock. I've said this before, but I like to use the terra tape because on a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock that's been saturated with those fireworks sprays, it's nice to use a nice strong adhesive so that you know that warping goes away. You can also run the cardstock through your die cut machine just with pads so that you can help flatten it out. But I found that I didn't need to do that when I used the Terra tape. So now I've just taken a small strip of that Bristol Smooth and cut it into a banner shape. And I'm going to stamp a sentiment from a Whimsy Stamp Set called Flyby, and it has a number of adorable kind of cursive sentiments with airplanes and different modes of transportation and some cute little clouds. And I'll take my VersaFine Clair Nocturne, my favorite black ink for sentiment stamping, and ink up this hello sentiment and stamp it down onto that cardstock, because the idea here is that I'd like to make a banner for the airplane part of this card. So I'm going to stamp the airplane, and then I'm grabbing two Copic markers, B28, which is royal blue, and R29, which is lipstick red, and simply filling in the little windows and giving the plane a small red stripe. I should add that the paper that I'm coloring on is a Hammermill cover copy paper. It has the frog on the front. Like to use that for my Copic coloring. The Bristol Smooth, the ink tends to kind of spread out on the paper, and I don't really like that. So now I'm just fussy cutting the little airplane out with a pair of small scissors. And once I have the airplane cut out, I'm going to take the banner and take off a little bit of that edge because it tended to be a little too long for the card. So I will take some foam dots now so that I can pop up the banner on the page, and I will do the same thing for the small airplane. Now, actually, I decided not to pop up the airplane, but instead just to add a little bit of tacky adhesive and stick it straight down. So the banner looks like it's a little bit in front of the airplane as it flies through the air. And now I just take a Faber-Castell pen and draw a little line for a banner. And I finish my card. And you'll see both finished cards here at the end. The first one that I did and then the second one that you actually saw in the video. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial on these two cards and using your fireworks sprays, embossing powder, and VersaMagic. Have a great day and tune in more for great videos here at Imagine.